All right, welcome everybody. I have an awesome interview here today. We have two guests, Cassidy Helrigel, Justin Staten, and they are with Everstar Investments. And so you're going to be amazed about the numbers that they've been able to purchase and actually their profits. And we're going to get into all of those details soon enough. But first of all, just welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
All right. So we talk all the time. Cassidy, I've known you for, I don't know, 4 years or so, and gotten lots of stories over the years. But what was your start in real estate? When did you first start thinking about it? What was that beginning like?
Yeah, so I started, well, I grew up doing construction. My family has a construction company. My dad, he does foundations, basements, moves houses. So really started out, I got a free house from my dad because he was moving it for a farmer. They were building a house right behind their other house. So we moved their old house out, put it in the city, and started fixing it up. So we did everything in there. We did the electrical, the plumbing, built a full basement underneath of it, poured the concrete and everything, and then just went through the whole house, ripped out all the plaster, put new drywall in, new kitchens, new baths, new floor, everything. So we did the whole house, even moved in another garage into the property as well. New roof, put a porch on the front of it. So after that, then I kind of, said, hey, real estate's, pretty amazing what you can do with it. If you take something that's, somebody's ready to destroy and throw away, and you make it into, $100,000+ asset, it's valuable to somebody. So that got me thinking, if I can do this, to one property, what can you do with others? And then I started, buying foreclosures, living in them, fixing them up, and then selling them. And then, started, once we started having kids, my wife said, we're not going to do this in the house anymore. We need to start a business doing that. So we started with houses, and then finally on the apartments, and then kind of went from there. So that's kind of how I got my start, just small scale, doing everything myself, and then slowly ramped up, and then kept going from there. And it's amazing. Really excited about where the business is going and what we can do from this point on. I feel like we're just finally breaking into where we need to go. And it's just going to be this next year, especially, is just going to be amazing.
That's awesome. So the early deals, and when you were first getting started, your parents were familiar with the construction. Did they understand real estate too? Were they all for it or encouraging, or what was that like?
Yeah. I'm unfortunate. My parents were very, supportive of what I was doing. Didn't really have a lot of real estate experience, so just kind of learned how to do that. Got my wife involved with real estate too. She has her license now, so she helps with the buying and the selling. Just kind of making that more of a family business now. So it's amazing what we can do, as a group in the community, and kind of build that out from there.
Sure. And your early deals, I know you've bought single family homes, small multifamilies. You've done a number of flips. How did you typically fund those along the way?
Yeah, so I started out funding everything myself through, if I bought a foreclosure, I'd save some money and fix it up with my own money and then sell it. But when I'm trying to scale, I couldn't do that. So I found other people that kind of had a like-minded vision with me, and then asked them like, hey, you want to, be involved in this project with me? I can help you out, give you a return on your money, and do it that way. So it's just kind of like, started out with my community. And my friends, my network there, and kind of grew that out. So it was just basically telling everybody that I knew what I was doing. Like, hey, I'm involved in real estate, flipping houses. Look at this. Here's this before picture. Here's this after picture. We're basically showing, basically a portfolio of my work of what I've been doing and how amazing it was. They're like, oh, that's amazing. I always, was interested in real estate. How can I get involved in that? Like, oh, it's amazing. Yeah, come and see my project. And, if you got a little bit of money, we can put it in here. We can grow this thing. So just talking to people back and forth, that's really how I started out growing, from my little house that I lived in to, a portfolio of houses and apartment complex. Just telling people, just spreading the word, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that you don't have to be a salesman or like have this
Right.
perfect pitch worked out, or
Nope.
um,
Just let people know what you're doing, you know?
yeah,
They want to know your story.
yeah, just share your story, tell your story, convey your passion, and people
Exactly.
naturally will be drawn to you when you're passionate about it. But also because we're in real estate, people are just
Yep.
naturally drawn to real estate, whether
Right.
that's GTV or what, I don't know, but everybody, is interested
Right.
in real estate. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a key point. Just don't be shy about your work and your passion for real estate, and you'll find people who want to get involved and help you with that.
Exactly. Very true.
So, what about you, Justin? What was your beginning in real estate? How'd you get your start? And what was the time frame like? How long ago was it?
Yeah, so I got my start in real estate when I was active duty in the Air Force. I got stationed in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I bought a house down there and then moved back to Ohio, and I kept that house as a rental. And then when I moved back to Ohio, I bought another house here, and then within a couple months, I had bought a third house. So I had two rentals, one in Little Rock, one in Ohio. And then I ended up owning a commercial building in a small town here in Ohio due to a business that I was involved with. And I held those for about 4 or 5 years. And that was about 10, 15 years ago now, I guess. And that was my introduction to real estate. I didn't even really know what I was doing. I had no experience, kind of like Cassidy. I just was always told that was a good thing to do, is have rentals. And so that's what I tried to do. And it all kind of happened by accident in a way. And I held those for a few years and then eventually sold them. But that's where I got the bug in real estate. And then I went on with a large real estate investment company where I learned the commercial space, the commercial multifamily space, and then started developing that side. And that's when I knew, when I made that transition, that's when I knew real estate is what I wanted to do for a career, as a business, et cetera.
Okay. When you were, first just having your residence and then turning it into a rental and then having another rental in Ohio and eventually getting that commercial building, were the people around you, did they understand what you were doing? Did they think you were kind of crazy leaving your equity in those properties? What were the thoughts of the people around you?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. I think those that were closest to me thought I was the craziest. They just thought it was too risky, that I was possibly making a mistake, having all those payments, as they would talk about. But those that I was close to in the business circles that I ran in thought it was smart investment and smart things to do. So it was a mixed bag, really. They ended up all working out really well, and I made money on all three deals. But I didn't really know, like I said, I didn't really know what I was doing back then. So the success I did have from it was almost happenstance, if you will.
Well, that's awesome. So I know there are a lot of people probably listening who have felt like maybe they have a couple rentals and they feel like they stumbled into it, whether they moved and kept it as a rental or whatever reason. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who can relate to hearing both sides, hearing people kind of criticizing or questioning, why are you doing this? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? And the other side that are respect what you do and are encouraging. For you personally, how'd you kind of put aside the naysayers and stick it out with your properties?
I just believed in it. I saw the money coming in. I saw the cash flow. I had net positive cash flow on every one of those deals every single month. So there was plenty enough money to pay the bills, pay the taxes, pay the mortgage, and I still had money left over. So that alone was enough to ignore the naysayers and say, well, I'm making money. I'm paying down the debt. I'm gaining equity in these properties. So if I do ever sell them someday, it was simple math type stuff, just looking at it common sense wise. So that was real easy to quiet the naysayers in my head and not, possibly make a bad real estate decision and get rid of something or whatever. So it was just seeing the numbers, and I knew that, 2 + 2 = 4, and that's all I needed to know. So.
Okay. So in essence, not going with your emotions,
Yes.
but just being, sticking to the numbers. And as long as the numbers are good, keep going in that direction, right?
The only fear I actually had back then was everybody talks about taking on debt and taking on debt. And I thought, well, if I ever really want to go buy my own house that I'm going to live in, I may not be able to get that loan because I've taken on all this debt. But, I was just a novice at the time. I didn't understand debt service cover ratios and all that, which I'm sure maybe we'll talk a little bit about today. So had I known now what I, didn't know then, I would have kept buying and kept getting in more in the commercial space and probably some single family residentials. But that was really the only fear I had back then was, oh, am I going to overextend myself, or I'm going to take out too many loans and then the bank's going to tell me no. And then that never actually materialized. So,
yeah. Well, I know for me in the early years that it was day to day. One day I was like, I'm going to conquer the world and this is the greatest business ever. And then the next day it's like, I'm done. I'm selling it all. I'm sick of it. I'll go get a job, any job.
Right. Well, it's funny too. It's like, I didn't run into any of those horror stories that, we often run into managing properties and having tenants and units. And I had really good tenants. I had a property management company that was managing the day to day. So, I didn't go through any of those bad experiences then either. Now, maybe if I had, I'd be a little more reluctant to not, keep doing it or keep going. But I literally was almost pure luck and happenstance that I had successful outcomes with those. Because I, legit didn't know what I was doing, but I also wasn't having all the bad experience often associated when you're running this as a business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you have a bad experience, I just think it's a good reminder that our emotions will fluctuate. There'll be days we're scared. There'll be days when we're excited, and that's just being human. That's life, you know? So, but the numbers over time don't lie. So if you can go back and look at the numbers, you can see tangibly that this business is working. We're making profit. I'm moving in the right direction. That's a good step for anybody struggling with, should I keep going? Should I not? Is this business worth it? Right. So, and if you can make it through the early years, I mean, down the road, it's well worth it. You should keep going.
Yes, keep going.
All right. So you also said you worked for a commercial real estate company. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And what was your role with them, or what did that involve?
Yeah, so I was on the acquisitions team there. So part of my responsibilities were to identify properties for the firm to acquire. We were looking in 14 different markets across the United States. We typically only looked at Class A assets and Class A areas, anything that ranged from 200 to 400 units. So it was my job to go boots on the ground, see the property, evaluate the property, meet with the property management team that was currently in place, and come up with what we thought was a good number to acquire that property. What would we pay for this property? And then I would be responsible for putting all those deal points together and making sure we got it to the closing table.
Sure. Man, that is a good fit for what you do now. Wow.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it was definitely the stepping stone to where we are now. Yes.
Yeah. So a bunch of questions with that. So for everybody listening, what is an A class property, or what does that mean?
Yeah, good question. So A class is typically an area that economically does well. So it's a neighborhood or an area that you're going to have your upscale eating, you're going to have your upscale shopping, restaurants. It's more of your upscale communities, and that's an A area. Your A property is going to be a property that it's a little bit higher rent to live there. It's a little bit higher class. It's going to have all the amenities that you want or could want or need. So it's going to have everything from the pool to sometimes more than one pool to mail services. Some of them had concierge services. So they're the creme de la creme, if you will, of apartment complexes.
Okay, sure. And, I'm curious, in that role, how much flexibility did you have, or what criteria did they give you? You're negotiating the deal, but for you to know whether it was a good deal or not, what all did they provide you, or what criteria?
Yeah, so the company itself had a very strict criteria on what they wanted to look for. And, without getting too involved, I'm no longer with the company, so I can't divulge, anything that they have proprietary. But what I can say is there was a very select criteria of what kind of property the company wanted. And it's very similar. I mean, I could speak to, what we look for too. It's a very similar process, but so it had to meet a certain kind of criteria. It had to be an A asset, it had to be in an A location. It had to be between about 200 and 400 units. It could be garden style, it could be a wrap, it could be a high rise, it could be any of those three different property variations. And what the real focus was is, operationally, is it efficient? Can the operations be improved? Is there value add opportunity? Can we increase rates and rents? And can we basically go in, create a value add situation with this property and then turn around and sell it in 4 to 5 years for a profit? And my flexibility in it was I was not the ultimate decision maker, and that was done by committee. So my job was to evaluate the deal, put it on paper, and then take it to that committee that would eventually make an ultimate decision.
Okay. So it was more the assessing what value adds you have, or what opportunity there was there.
What opportunity? Yeah. So we looked at everything from, like I said, the operations to the location to, we would get into the numbers, we would underwrite the deal. So we'd evaluate it financially, and really put together a picture of, okay, here's where it's at. So we can derive a value. Where do we know we can take it based off of, our economies of scale, our efficiencies, and how we operate properties, and how fast can we do that? That was basically how we looked at each deal.
Sure. So when you were working with them, were you investing on the side as well, or?
No, unfortunately, I was not allowed to do that as a part of the agreement, the employment agreement. But yeah, so no, I unfortunately was not allowed to go out and buy properties.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. The plot thickens. Okay. All right. So you guys have great stories, but how long ago did you meet? I know your partnership now, is just exploding and what you've been able to do together. So how long ago did you meet? What was that like?
Yeah. Cassidy, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we've known each other for at least a few years now. We actually started the business just over a year ago, because I was talking to Justin, what he was doing with the multifamily space, and my wife and I we switched from flipping houses to basically holding the houses and putting them on the short-term rental market, so Airbnb. So we fixed them up really nice, we staged them, and then we're getting a lot more income coming in as opposed to traditional rentals. So when I was talking to Justin, it kind of was interesting to see where he was going, because I was starting to get into, a little bit larger apartment complexes, for my business model, what I wanted to see. And he was already in that space doing that with those larger scale apartments. And I'm just, the light bulb went off, when I was talking to him, like, let's do this together. You're already doing exactly what I want to do. I can have value add to what his knowledge was. And it was kind of like this thing that's like, this is going to be great. If we put these two ideas together, we really got something here. So that's kind of where we went with it, and have been really growing, ever since. So it's really exciting.
So that's sharp. So it's been a little over a year since you started the partnership, or started Everstar Investments, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, August 19th was our anniversary. It was our birthday, I guess. I don't know if we call it an anniversary or birthday, but yeah. As of August 19th, we're a year old officially, Everstar.
All right. So what was the first deal that you did together?
Yeah, so so backing up just a little bit, part of that light bulb moment was, we thought, okay, you guys have built this short-term rental portfolio, and I had dabbled in short-term rental, and we got this and we both love the multifamily space, and we said, well, what happens if we put those two things together? And that was that light bulb moment where we created this hybrid model. So our first target property, we knew it had to be a multifamily, and we wanted to kind of test our theory, our thesis, if you will, on whether or not this would work, combining multifamily and short-term rentals, which we knew it was happening on large scale on some big metropolitan areas like like New York or not New York. I think it was down in Dallas or Atlanta. Something Sonder is the company's name, and they had been doing it on a large scale. But the middle market in the multifamily world is the most ignored market in the world. So we knew it had to be a middle market property. It had to be at least 10 units or more. And we were going to try to convert at least 40% of all the units in that building. So we identified different target markets locally because we wanted to start close to home that we thought would be really good. And we knew what the property would look like. And I think we formed up in August. We spent 3 or 4 months just planning and making sure our model was right and that we had the tools in place and we had people on the right seats on the bus. And then we went into full acquisition mode. And that first property we found locally in Dayton, it was a 14-unit building. It literally met every criteria where almost all the units were under one roof. It was a great area for work. Because part of our Airbnb strategy or short-term rental strategy is not doing travel, people who are traveling for leisure. Okay. We want like vacation travel. We want people who are traveling for work. So the market and the area, the location was perfect. The property was perfect. And then I think we made an offer on that deal sometime in November, December after we started. And I think we closed that, or we made the offer in November, and I think we closed it in January.
Yeah. Yeah. Right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Sure.
So do you want us to get into a little bit of the details of the deal, or?
Well, even before we get into that, we'll get into the details and the nitty gritty of the deal. But I think we need to, or you guys should explain a little bit, because I think it is like a big light bulb. Why does the short-term rental concept match up with the multifamily concept so well? Why do those complement each other?
Yeah. So going back to the middle market comment that I made, middle market is secondary and tertiary markets in the multifamily space. And what that means is areas that are not major metropolitan areas. Like Columbus would be a primary market in the multifamily space. Whereas Dayton, you could make an argument it's primary, but it's really a secondary market to like Cincinnati and Columbus. The suburbs of Dayton, for example, would be tertiary markets, right? So they're not primary, they're not a secondary market. They're really outside of a secondary market. They're kind of out on their own. So that corner of the industry is really not paid much attention to. It's almost forgotten because most of the investors in multifamily are institutional money or large firms. And they want large properties in primary markets. So they want Class A, Class B in primary markets. So we knew that there was a lot of property out there that was available at a good price point that we could get into at a very good price point and increase the valuation to a point where we could cash out in a very short amount of time and not only make our investors happy, but make, a substantial amount of money doing so. So that's why we picked that area, the secondary market. I don't know how deep you want me to go in the weeds. I keep going back.
More so, before we get into the numbers for the deals, I think those numbers will make more sense if we talk about, how you value a multifamily property, how, by doing the short-term model and getting, I remember from discussions in the past, Cassidy, you're talking about 3 times the normal rent, which, makes me just drool over what that could do and how that affects the value of a multifamily.
Yeah. Good question. So Cassie, I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit on, what we're seeing. And so part of the secondary market, tertiary market is those rents are usually plateaued, right? So keep that in mind for everybody who's listening. Your secondary, tertiary markets, the rents are
maybe we should start out with, people are familiar a lot with, single family houses and how those are valued. If you have a rental house or you have a house that you live in, the value is based on what the market is doing. So what other comparable houses have sold for in that market, as opposed to multifamily. The value of a multifamily is based on a couple different things. One is the cap rate in the area. So if you bought it for all cash, what's your rate of return on that asset? As well as how much money does the property produce? What is the net operating income of the property? So those things are going to determine, the purchase price or the value of the property. So that's kind of how it's different from single family houses. If somebody runs an apartment complex better, it's going to be valued better, as opposed to, hey, if you just have regular rental and the rental rates are capped out at this, it's not going to, those rental rates are not going to increase or decrease the value of that, single family house at all. So I think that's important to see. Okay, here's the baseline of where our value is, compared to single family houses, as most people would be familiar with.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So for me, it's having mainly single families and small multifamilies, less than 5 units,
Yep.
then I could raise rents from 800 to 1,600 a month, but it's not going to change the actual value of those properties if the other houses in the area didn't change in value.
Right.
So whereas, buying a multifamily, if you can get double or triple the rents with that short-term rental model, as long as your expenses don't double or triple, then the value of that property is going to go up as your income goes up. So,
right. Yeah. And that's important to point out. So to back up, our hybrid model is combining traditional rents, right? Traditional multifamily units with short-term rental units, meaning we're going to go in to some of these units in the property. We are going to fix them up, give them a facelift. We're going to fully furnish them, and then we're going to put them out in the short-term rental market. And that's where we get that rent increase. And since, as Cassidy was saying, commercial properties are valued based off of NOI, or a net operating income, we haven't actually increased the operating cost of that property, but we've increased the gross rent. So almost every bit of that gross rent increase falls to the bottom line, otherwise known as NOI, which immediately increases the value of the property.
Sure. So, okay, so take us through the numbers for that first deal. Ballpark purchase price, average rents.
Yeah, so it's funny because we found the deal, and as soon as we found it, we lost it. Kind of like for our first deal, it was so interesting because we found the deal, and we were like, and we called on it, and it was under contract, so we were out. So then we started looking for the next one, and it was perfect for our first deal. About a month later, I think, Michelle, Cassidy's wife, had called the broker just on a whim to follow up, which key guys always follow up on deals because they fall apart at the finish line. And it had fallen out of contract. They couldn't perform and get to the closing table. So we immediately put a counter offer in. We offered $500,000 for the deal. Again, 14 units, 12 of those were under the same roof, and they had 2 end units that you access from the outside. We offered 500 based off of our underwriting. We knew we were going to go in and improve the property, make upgrades, and furnish, some of these units for Airbnb. So we had factored spending about $270,000 roughly. There was some capital expenditures that we wanted to do, some CapEx stuff. So we got a loan for $400,000 on the 80% debt. We needed $100K down for the equity piece, and then an additional $170 for the improvements.
Okay. And what were the average rents when you purchased it?
They were hovering about $435 when we bought it.
Okay. And so once I don't know, I'm imagining it takes a good amount of input to put the units at a high level for the short-term rental, to furnish them, do things that you wouldn't do for a normal rental. So once you did that, what were the average rents, or what do they average out to now?
So usually when we tell people about this, it's never okay to lie in business, right? But normally we tell people lower than what we're actually getting, because when we tell people what we're actually getting, they tend to not believe us. So on average, I'll give you one example. And these were all 1-bed, 1-bath apartments too, by the way, which was huge. That's right down our lane for a short-term rental. I'll give you one example. The smallest unit in the entire building, the 1-bed, 1-bath, it's almost close to an efficiency, really. we were getting $415 a month rent. Since we've converted it to short-term rentals, we've been getting on average $1,650, so $1,650 a month on that one unit.
Man,
So,
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and again, we don't increase the operating costs yet. There are the upfront costs of upgrading and furnishing, but we've got that pretty much down to a science now. And we have a template that we use on every single one of them. It's the same flooring, same paint, same colors, same lighting fixtures, same everything. So it's easy to get in and get out and convert them. So we have it's a fixed cost for us on what our upgrades and furnishings, and we put in the same couches, same end table, same coffee table, same bed, same mattresses, pillows, sheets. It's all a template. So we know what those costs are going to be to upgrade, which we've been averaging about $5,000 on upgrading the unit itself and about another $5,000 to $7,000 on furnishings. So we're about $10,000 to $12,000 per unit upgrade and get them on the short-term rental market.
Okay, sure. And I know you had said you don't want to deal, or you're not targeting vacation rentals, vacation short-term rentals. You're targeting business short-term rentals. So what is that like for people, who worry about the management and how to deal with short-term rentals? What is it like in a business context? How often are they coming in and out? What's your normal stay? Things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're averaging, like probably a 3-night stay right now, but 2020, this year has been, so different than, the history of the short-term rental market.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
With the COVID coming in here, there was one day where the calendar for all of our rentals got wiped out. The entire thing, like, okay, now we got a blank slate. And then 2 days after that, people started booking them for the long term. So 1 month plus stays, for almost the same amount that we had for a nightly rental. So we're seeing, that is the trend right now, as opposed to, just the short-term rental, day-long stay, which we're still doing that. And we're still, I think we're hovering still about 95 occupancy during the summertime, which is typical. But we have a lot more of that kind of the midterm hybrid model as well. And I think that's really the sweet spot, because, if you're talking, a long-term tenant, there's not a lot that you have to do with them. They take care of the place themselves. They put in a maintenance ticket once in a while. And that's kind of the same thing for, a furnished rental. That's long-term. You might, go in there and clean once in a while, check on the property, do some minor maintenance tasks. So it's kind of the same thing as, what people are used to, but the rates, are 3 or 4 times the monthly rental because it's furnished. So that furnished space, it's huge because, somebody's going to come in here. They're not going to stay for a long time, but maybe they're coming from work. We get a lot of people right now that are, having contract jobs, for different companies because, in Dayton, there's a lot of, with the Air Force Research Lab, a lot of contracts coming on for that. They're redoing the runway right now. So we have contractors on for that. So a lot of those different things that, people are coming in for work, and they want something that's, nicer than a hotel. It has a kitchen there. It's a long-term stay. It's furnished. It's really nice. It's just exactly what they need. It's that niche that we're going for right now that's so successful for us. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, it sounds ideal. So how do you target that niche, or how do you market towards that type of traveler, I guess?
Yeah, it's fun.
So right.
Go ahead, Cassidy.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin. So a lot of ours are on Airbnb right now, but we do a little word of mouth, especially throughout the base and through other businesses and agencies in the community here. Doing a lot of that networking and figuring out like, hey, who has contracts that are coming in, and then once we have one, then they switch that to the next person that's coming in. If somebody's switching out and taking their job, if they have to switch out. So a lot of that networking and marketing, plays a big role in this.
Okay.
Right.
On Airbnb, can you say minimum 14-night stay or something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you do that, or do you just welcome whoever wants to pay? And You take whatever.
You know, we don't have a long-term minimum stay on a lot of our places. Some we have, you know, 2 to 3 night minimum. We're actually thinking about, for some of our places, trying that out to see, hey, is this going to work? Because we have to be able to test that market there, you know, because that is a sweet spot of, you know, what we've liked, you know, for people coming in our properties. You know, it works well for the management. So, you know, it's something that we might try in the future. We're not doing it now, but, you know, it's available.
Yeah, and Chad, to go back to your question about operations, you know, if people are thinking about doing this model, the one thing I would say is, you know, Cassidy and Michelle spent time developing some of these operations, like the communication part of Airbnb. It's a lot different, and it can be a beast if you don't have a system in place to manage that. So we were fortunate in the beginning to already have some of that in place. We already had cleaning teams established that could go in and turn these units and et cetera. But if you're going to start this out on your own, I would highly recommend getting with somebody like us or somebody that you know that has done Airbnb, that understands those systems and the communication that needs to happen. Otherwise, it will feel extremely overwhelming, and you won't be able to do it at scale. So that's important to know and understand. I felt like it was important to bring up.
You know, Justin, that's a great point, because when, you know, Michelle does all the communication with all the guests, because she's such a sweetheart, you know, she understands people's problems, those sort of things. You know, once we had about 3 on our own, and she's dealing with the constant check-in, check-out, all the questions, you know, where's the Wi-Fi password? How do I get in? You know, what are the directions of the property? Is it around, you know, this certain event that I want to be on? All those questions, you know, it was a full-time job at 3 properties, full-time job. So you got to have, you know, assistants. You got to have a process in place to deal with those things. You know, something that, you know, a little bit of automation in there to answer those, you know, frequently asked questions if they get brought up. So that's imperative to do at scale. You know, it's a must, because anything over 3, it's not possible. So you have to have another process in place. You have to have a good system in order to make it work successfully.
Yeah, that's sharp. There's a lot of moving pieces in that.
There are,
really, you know, to scale any business, you have to have good systems in place. But I think especially short-term rental business, just because there's so much going on. So, yeah, that's sharp. So with that first deal that you did, if you were to put a valuation on it now, you know, you said you paid 500, you had another 170, I believe it was, that you put into it. With the increase in rents, what do you think the valuation would be near now?
Yeah, so we haven't put in, so we had an equity partner with us on the deal too, who brought the equity piece, and we have not actually used the full 170 that we were going to use on this deal. We just over budgeted to make sure we had enough capital to do all the improvements that we wanted to do. That being said, the units that we've converted so far, we've increased the value of this property just based on the new gross rents that'll create the new NOI to about $775,000. So, you know, we bought it at 5 back in January, we closed, and already this is August, and we've increased that value to about $775,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. 50% increase in less than a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so
we're not even done yet with this one.
No, and that's the amazing part. You know, we're shooting for $1 million valuation by next year.
Yeah.
And we're, you know, well on the way there. We convert, you know, a few more units, and it's going to be right on where we want it to be. So right on track.
Yep.
Okay, so you're saying you've converted some of the units kind of like as people move out, or as there's a turnover naturally. And so your target is 40% of the units short term eventually.
Yes. And that 40% is very specific. There's a reason why it's 40%. It's not because we ran a model and said, oh, this is the right, you know, this is the right sweet spot. It's because insurance wise, you know, your coverages, if you convert more than 40% of your units, you actually have to have a different insurance policy on the property to cover the short-term rentals. So to keep our insurance costs down, which again, the more costs go up, the more your NOI is affected, we only convert 40% at any given property.
Awesome. Yeah.
Just a little nugget to know.
That's great to know. Good. So, all right. So okay. I was about to jump ahead, man. And we missed a key component that you brought up, because I'm sure a lot of people thought, Well, yeah, that's great to just go buy a $500,000 property and have an extra 170 from somebody you know. But in my world, people aren't running around with 170,000. And how did you put that deal together, or how was it structured to purchase it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Cassidy, you want me to take it or?
Yeah, you can take this one.
Yeah. So the way Cassidy and when we set out, we just, a lot of people, when they structure multifamily deals, it's almost like the casinos. The house is always going to get paid, right? And Cassidy and I were not a fan of that from the beginning, because without your investors, you cannot scale, you cannot grow, you cannot take on more properties, et cetera. So we decided early on that we were going to structure our deals with the investor in mind. We wanted them to get paid first. So the way we structure it is, for any equity piece that they bring, they get a certain percentage of the deal. In this particular deal, because this was the first time doing a deal with this investor at a large scale, he had done some other deals, but a large deal. So what we did with him on this specific deal is we gave him 50% equity, which is a lot, for the technically 270,000 is what he brought total, or what he committed total to the project. So for that 270,000, he got 50% equity. He got a 7% preferred return on his money. And he gets 100% of his capital out before Cassidy and I take a dime on our 50%. So the other reason that we set it up this way, not only do we want the investor to benefit first, but we know with the hybrid model, we can drive that valuation really quick. And cash out our investor with a refi or a supplemental loan, or we can just take it to disposition. Probably won't do that. We'll probably just refinance it. But until he's paid back 100%, we don't get a dime out of the deal. Now, we do take a management fee for managing the property, but 100% goes back to the investor first.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think that would provide them with a lot of security. They should feel more confident going into the deal with that. And if the equity partner was bringing the money, who was getting the loan, or how was the loan structured?
Yeah, so that's just, we have a great relationship with a local bank here. They work with us, they do portfolio loans, so they keep everything in house. So, I've been working with them for, the last 5 years. So they have all my financials on record. So every year I just update them with, hey, here's our profit and loss, for the year. Here's, my bank statements and things like that. And then when we need to go to them for a loan, I just call them up. They're like, hey, we have this contract on this, apartment complex. What else do you need from me to make it happen? And it's just so smooth. That's one piece of advice I'd really recommend. Talk to your local bankers, the small banks, that can help you out on some of these deals. Especially if they're doing, maybe a little bit larger commercial type loans too. And they can really, help a deal go through. So that way, I've talked to people that have done single family houses. You go through some of these big agencies, and they're just keep asking you for more information, more paperwork. You have to validate, this bank transaction. It doesn't look right. We don't have to do any of that. I just call them up. Hey, it's on record. It's ready to go. And it just goes through. So, just developing that relationship has been so beneficial, making these deals happen that we need to, and expansion. We've talked to them and we're ready to go for many more deals in the future.
Yeah,
definitely make a relationship with your local banks and credit unions and who you have in the local area.
Awesome. Yeah. Sure. So where'd you go from there? I guess another question with structure, when you refinance and pay the investor back, then there's still 50% equity owner. There's an operating agreement that says how you'll decide whether to sell it or refinance it, or how you'll keep it, things like that. All that's laid out, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's all laid out in an operating agreement that we do on the front end. And again, back to the way we structure, that's the beautiful thing about this model is, for the investor specifically, is even when their capital is cashed out, they still get to stay in the deal. And a lot of multifamily firms do not structure deals that way. And if they do stay in, their percentage of ownership is severely reduced, sometimes 10% or less. We don't want to do that. And there's a key reason why. And I think it's important for people to understand, if you treat your investors right and you make sure they make money first, there will come a time in your career, in your investing business, that you will never have to look for money again. Because every time you have a deal, that investor who you treated right and made sure they got paid, and paid first, will be standing there ready to support you and do your deal. And that's, when we started out, that's one thing we wanted to make sure is there's going to come a point we don't want to have to look for money anymore. We just want to focus on doing deals, because that's how you scale and grow. So yeah, once we get to that point, and the beautiful part about this is the part that I love the most, and a lot of people don't understand this, is we will more than likely, the capital transaction we'll deploy will be a refi. And the reason that is because we'll increase the valuation to $1 million. We'll get 80% refi on that, maybe 75. But in this specific deal, that'll mean we can pull out $800,000. Okay. We owe the bank 400. We owe the investor another 170. We split the rest 50-50. So that's a big paycheck for a short amount of time. But the best part about it is because it's refi proceeds, it's 100% tax free.
There we go.
You don't pay tax on it. The investor doesn't pay tax on it. And then because we've increased the gross, and a lot of people are like, well, isn't that over leveraging your property if you got $1 million valuation and you took out 800,000? No, because we increased those rents through the short term. And the way we underwrite this is, even worst case scenario, if the short-term rental market implodes tomorrow, what can we rent these apartments at furnished apartment rates?
Yeah.
And even those numbers will cash flow positive at the new debt service that we'll take on when we refi. So we underwrite that on the front end so that we know how much can we take out on a refi and still be cash flow positive on the deal. And then we just hold the deal for another 7 to 10 years and cash flow it.
Yep.
It's awesome. That's sharp. I love the model, and I love the concept. So, so what was your second deal? Where'd you go? I didn't mean, I've known you guys a while. I knew you were smart, but now getting into the numbers, I'm like, man, these guys really are smart. So what was the second deal after the 14 unit? Where'd you go from there?
Yeah, we got a little clever, and I'll let Cassidy go into the details on this one, because it's a bit of we stretched a little bit on this one, given the area, the type of property, and what decisions led us to do it. So.
Okay, so my wife, Michelle, she's from up north, Massillon, Canton area, and she's been bugging me probably for the last 3 years about, the Football Hall of Fame. It's a great location. They're doing, a $500 million expansion. They're doing a football themed hotel up there. We got to get properties in Canton. So I've tried to put her off as much as I could, but she finally found, Justin, how did we find this deal? It was through one of our acquisition partners here. He brought the deal to us, and with Canton, they have a few different regulations with the short-term rental market, that it's outlawed in single-family homes. You can't do it. If you're going to do short-term rental, it has to be in a commercial multifamily space. So the acquisitions manager brought us this deal. We're looking at it. It's in Canton. 5 minutes from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it was really neat, and we started moving on it. There's significant upside. The rental rates are under market value, so we can do a couple different things. When we underwrite, these commercial multifamily deals, we're looking at what are the rental rates at right now for the rest of the area. So you still do comparables. You do a rental analysis of the area, and they're still about $100 dollars below, at least, maybe even 200, right, Justin?
Yeah, they're closer, about 150-ish.
Yeah, 150 under the rental market. So there's room to grow. We don't underwrite them at the short-term rental markets. Some people get in a lot of trouble because they find these deals that they look great. They're going to be performing really well at short-term rental rates. Then they do their offer based on those numbers. And then all of a sudden, hey, 2020 happens, and then the bottom falls out, and how are you going to pay for that, if you don't have any tenants or guests coming in? So we have to do it, on a twofold approach. So there has to be value add on the traditional rental market to increase the valuation of the property by improving it, increasing those rents up a little bit. And then, on that, we're going to further increase it by, staging it and furnishing it and bringing in short-term guests to triple or even quadruple what the rental market can handle. So that's kind of where we are on that property right now. We are in the process of improving it. We kind of slowed down a little bit, during the COVID that's happening right here, but we're ready to go on it, and we're ready to expand. And we try to do, actually, we closed 2 deals at the same time on that.
Yeah.
Got another one in Dayton here that another investor really liked. So I talked to the bank. I'm like, hey, what can we do with this? They're like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll just bundle them together. You'll have your separate payments and it'll work out great. So I'm like, okay, if we got the bank support, they're willing to loan the money on it. So let's go ahead and do it. So that was another another few units in Dayton here. And we're going to do the same thing. We didn't buy it, at a deep discount like we did the other one, but the rental rates are still under market value, and we're going to be able to drive those up, and then still the same thing. We're pretty much triple, the short-term rental on what we could get traditionally. So that's doing really well. We just need to be able to convert more units, which is our plan throughout the year here on expansion, and then we're off to the races. So it's very exciting, to be able to, come together with a banker, have an acquisitions guy, be able to show us deals and close on those things and keep them happening. So we're really excited on where these are going to go.
That's sharp. A couple of things that stand out to me just in you talking about why that was an appealing deal. Especially because so many people are talking about this market right now and how everything's very high priced and it's hard to find a good deal or an undervalued property. But with it being multifamily, the fact that maybe you're buying it at cost now, but knowing that the rents are low and you can raise rents traditionally, that you can raise the value of that property. And then knowing with your hybrid model with 40% short-term rental rates being much higher, there's a lot of opportunity there. I think that's sharp.
Yeah.
And it's a deal that a lot of people would overlook probably because it doesn't look great.
Yeah.
But with your model, it really does.
Yeah. And just to clarify too, my background in the traditional multifamily wouldn't allow us to underwrite deals on a short-term rental basis. So we underwrite every deal like it's a traditional multifamily asset.
Yep.
And we want to know, can we make this work and be profitable, even if it's just a traditional asset in a bad economy and, awful economic occupancy rates, will it survive? So every deal that we bought, COVID was a little scary for everybody. But I can tell you, we were pretty confident moving through COVID. Just because we knew we were buying them right. We haven't bought a deal yet that we didn't buy with equity in it. So, we've been strong negotiators. Our underwriting is on point. We share those numbers with the sellers and the brokers, and they see that we put the time and effort into really underwriting these very, very well. So, we make a strong argument for buying well. So to your point, we won't. The short-term rental is the icing on the cake. We do look at those numbers and we run them and we say, if we put it at this rate per day and we get X amount of occupancy, what's that look like? And that's literally just the icing on the cake. But we definitely underwrite conservatively because the whole idea in investing is don't lose money, right? If you want to succeed in investing, just don't lose money, and you'll get there. So yeah, to your point, we make sure we underwrite them all traditionally.
Good. Sharp. And how many of those 2 deals that you did together, how many units were there?
Yeah. So we took down, so we closed in our first year that first property and then 2 more. We closed 50 units in about 4 months, roughly. And we've got on target right now, we've got about another, and here's the crazy part. We had another 200 units that we were working on. And because of COVID, that deal fell apart, not on our end, but on the seller's end, because of the whole pandemic. So had that deal not fallen apart, we would have taken down about 260 units in 4 months. But COVID kind of slowed the market down a little bit. We have about 328 in the pipeline right now that we're looking at that we'll be offering here in the next 30 days. So we're definitely still in acquisition mode.
It's awesome. Yeah. So looking forward, I mean, your partnership is fairly short term. And I think you're showing great numbers and amazing growth already. What do you plan moving forward the next 1 year, 5 years, 20 years? What are we talking here?
Yeah, well, we've had a couple conversations about that, and
Yeah.
it's for the end of this year, we want to get at least another 100 units in the portfolio before we get out of December. And then our long-term growth, the thing that we talk about the most, and this has just been kind of a slogan internally between us, is, we're going to be $100 million company. And that's been kind of our push. I know we have a short-term goal of getting to $1 million in net revenue by the end of 2021, which we're well on our way to doing. And then just building those relationships so that we can get to $100 million in net revenue. And that's a 10-year goal. We want to be to 100 million in 10 years.
Sure. And do you currently have enough investors? Are you looking for new investors as well as deals? Where are you there?
Yeah, so I mean, we always have to be looking for more people, to look at our deals, because I mean, what we've done so far, it's amazing, right? But it's not anything close to what we're going to do. So we always have to, talk to people, show them what we're doing, find other investors too, because if you saw some of our properties, it's just phenomenal, before and after what we've done, what our guests say. I think we just we passed 2,000 5-star reviews on Airbnb, because it's that customer service. We are in the customer service industry, and we do this to take care of people, right? So we want them to have a great place when they come. We want our traditional residents to feel like, hey, we're taking care of them, better than anywhere else. They have the best value that they can find. So if we can do that, and we can make other people money, and we can expand our business, it's a win-win-win, right? Everybody is going to be able to win. Everybody's going to be able to make money. And then we can expand it going forward. So that's really our goal, to take care of everybody that does business with us, so that they want to do business with us. I think that's so important.
It's awesome. I know I was looking at your website earlier, everstarinvestments.com, and all the pictures of your units. And I mean, it's high quality units. They're really nice.
Yeah, it really is.
And the reviews definitely speak to how you treat the customers. So
yeah, and another big milestone this week. I think it was Tuesday. I want to say Michelle would have to confirm this, but hit 2,500 reservations. So it's that's a huge Airbnb milestone, but also a huge milestone. 2,500 reservations booked.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's listening and they're hearing you guys buying, you're talking hundreds of units, and your valuations are 500, over $1 million, and you're looking at $100 million business as the target. What recommendations would you give for somebody else just getting started?
Yeah, I would say you have to start, if anybody's ever done anything real estate, bought a single family house or have a rental, it's just more on a bigger scale. It's the same thing. And when you get to a larger scale, say at least, 60 to 100 units, where the property can afford a full-time property manager, you're basically like buying a business. All the numbers are the same. Does it produce income? What are the expenses? And then you can get on to how it's valued. What's the net operating income, the NOI, how many expenses you have, what's the cap rate for the area. That way you can determine the value of that property and what's it worth, what's somebody willing to pay for it. So it's just like, any other real estate. It's just, doing more units at a time, more rentals in the same area. And actually it's easier, managing 100-unit housing or apartment complex can be easier than managing, 3 single family houses if you're doing it yourself, because you already have somebody that's their job, is to help you manage and grow and make this property perform. And then you can probably even afford a maintenance guy that's on staff full time to take care of all the other problems. So in a way, it's easier. It's a little bit bigger scale.
Yeah, I would argue that buying commercial, knowing both worlds now, I would argue that buying commercial multifamily is actually an easier process. It's just, it scares people because of the scale, but it's an easier process than buying a single family residential. And my advice to anybody that's looking to get started is simply just get started. There are three things that you can bring to any real estate deal, right? And every single person listening, every single person out there that wants to do more, get into investing, get into real estate, has one of these three things. Okay. So the three things is you can either have money in a deal, right? You can bring money to a deal. You can bring knowledge to a deal, or you can bring time. Okay. And every single person out there has one of those three things. So if you're interested in getting started, I don't care how big your goals are or how big you want to change your life, you have one of those three things. And we're always looking for people that have any one of those three things that we can do deals with and work with. So if you've got time, if you've got knowledge, or you got money, and you can work on the knowledge while you got the time, right? Both of those things are free. They don't cost you a dime. So, and if you get enough time, give enough time and gain enough knowledge, you'll eventually end up with the money. And then you'll have all three things. But if you're looking to start, just start. I mean, that's literally what Cassidy and I did. We had an idea, our eyes lit up. I remember the day we looked each other in the face and we're like, oh my God, this actually could be really big. It was literally a handshake and let's do this. We scheduled a meeting for the very next day and we were off to the races. So we just did. And at times it's scary. I know we've had some scary moments, but we just went for it. And that's what I would recommend people do.
Sure. I think that's great advice. Whatever you have, time, knowledge, or money, leverage it and just get started. Take that first step. And surround yourself with people who have the others.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So
it takes a team,
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And so for people on the outside, I know some people would say, you've got all these units, what's the motivation to get to 100 million? I'd be kicking my feet up on the beach or something. But what's your why? What really motivates you? What gets you up in the morning? What provides that drive to get to the next level?
Yeah. So, I mean, with me, it's being able to take care of people, it's a service industry. And not only that, I mean, there's so many people that, don't quite manage properties, as well as they could, and tenants know that, they know that, hey, I can go to a better place or I can have something else. So if we can provide that service that they can actually, have something and stay here and want to stay here because, it's us, it's our company managing it, that says a lot. My wife, she loves service too. She loves to help people, especially the short-term guests, take care of their problems, so that way they always want to come back for us. But, on top of that, even more, it's the business, I love, helping people in business, being part of a company that's growing. It's exciting. Doing the deals, it's the art of the deal. It's just phenomenal. So all those things, really build up to, is this enjoyable, right? To us, it is. It's very exciting on where this is going, making these deals happen and doing the negotiations. It's fun, so do something that you like and you enjoy and you're going to be happy.
Yeah. So part of doing this, I hope you guys didn't hear my dog barking because he was just, that's what happens when you work from home, guys. That's one of the things I enjoy about doing this. That's one of my whys. I have two big whys. The first is my kids. I want to be able to have time freedom with them. I want to be able to do all the things that they want to do in life and all the things I would like to do for them in life. I'd like to leave them a legacy. I think that's a huge responsibility when you become a parent is, you don't want to spoil your kids, but you want to leave the world for them a better place than what you had. So that's one of my biggest whys. And the other why is, I just love the hustle. I love the game. I love the deal. I love that in America, you can literally start from zero, from scratch, and build whatever you want to do. As long as you've got the hustle, the drive, and the motivation, you can literally turn your life into whatever you want. And that's my other big why is I literally have the freedom to do whatever I want to do. And if that's build $100 million business, I can. Somebody has a good quote out there and I'll butcher it, the quote and the person who quoted it, I'm sure, but I think it was Jim Rohn said, something about you either find a reason why or you'll find an excuse, right? And my reason why is that I just enjoy the freedom. And unfortunately, unfortunately, our society, you know, freedom is money a lot of times, right? So not having that stress of money, and when that goes away, you have more freedom, more time freedom, more freedom to do things, travel. So that's my why. I just love it. I love the deal, and I want to leave a legacy behind.
Sure. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time, coming on, sharing your story. I mean, there was a lot of great information for anybody listening, and I think a lot of encouragement for anybody. So if somebody wants to find out more about you or your company and kind of follow what you're doing, how should they do that?
Yeah, so you need to go on Facebook, Everstar Investments, check us out there, or the website, everstarinvestments.com. We're trying to get more into social media. Hopefully by the end of the week, you'll see us on a few more platforms. So start with Facebook, and then, you know, next week, you know, maybe you can find us somewhere else, but that's the biggest one to start with.
Yeah. And if you guys want to reach out personally, you know, you can hit us up with email too, you know, Justin at everstarinvestments.com or Cassidy at everstarinvestments.com. By all means, drop us a line. If you got questions about anything we talked about today, I know sometimes I'm in a bad habit of just using lingo. So if you got questions, anything you want to learn more, just drop us a line.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Great opportunity. So, all right. Thank you again, guys. We're going to have you on again down the road and see the progress you've made and where you're going then. So.
Absolutely. Would love to do it.
Yeah, we'd love it.
All right. Appreciate it. And thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks.